peptides. You've probably seen them popping up everywhere, right? Especially when people talk about hair growth, promising these incredible results. But at the same time, there's this cloud of confusion and maybe even concern around them. So today, we're going to cut right through all that noise and get to what's really going on.
Okay, let's just dive right into the big question, the one that stumps so many people. If these peptides are such a game changer for hair, why can't you just, walk into a pharmacy and buy them? See, the thing is, the answer has nothing to do with whether they work or not. No, it's a much messier story, a tangled web of regulation, risk, and this booming online gray market. All right, so before we dive into all the messy stuff, let's start with the good part, the promise. Why is everyone so hyped about peptides in the first place? Okay, so here's the deal, and it's super simple. They just work. Peptides, at their core, are these little chains of amino acids. And you know amino acids, right? They're the building blocks for proteins, like the keratin that makes up our hair. So what these peptides can do is act like tiny messengers, basically telling your hair follicles, hey, stay in that growth phase a little longer or wake up. This isn't just some marketing gimmick. We're talking about targeted science here. And that effectiveness, that's the engine driving this entire conversation, even with all the hurdles we're about to get into.
Okay, but that very effectiveness, well, that's what leads us straight to the heart of the problem. We're about to step into what you could call a regulatory gray zone. And believe me, it's pretty murky.
Right, if they work, what's the problem? The catch has nothing to do with if they work. It's all about access, safety, and a whole lot of confusion from the people in charge.
And here's where it all starts. The FDA's position on this is, frankly, a mess. According to our source, peptides are not very regulated, and the agency's official stance is pretty much unknown. And this is where it gets really messy. The FDA has actually banned the manufacturing and compounding of a lot of these specific peptides. So what does that do? It pushes a product that people really want even further into the shadows. And, well, you know what happens when you can't get something people really want through the proper channels, right? A gray market pops up to fill that void. Suddenly, you've got people going online to buy these things called research peptides. And yeah, that's every bit as risky as it sounds. You have absolutely no idea what you're getting. Is it pure? Is it the right dose? Heck, is it even the real thing?
So this gray market, it opens up a whole can of worms, a whole new set of dangers for anyone just curious about peptides. So let's talk about that. How do you even begin to navigate these risks? Because they are very, very real. It really is a double-edged sword. On one side, you've got this incredible allure. They work. But on the other side, you've got the harsh reality. You're wading into this totally unregulated online market. Plus, a lot of these peptides, they need to be injected. That's a serious medical procedure, not something you do in your bathroom. And the big one, these things are not just harmless vitamins. Yeah, let's just stick with that last point for a second because it's probably the most important thing you'll hear. They are, and I quote, not completely innocuous. This isn't some weekend DIY biohacking project. You really, really need to know what you're doing, which means you need real medical expertise. Okay, so after all that doom and gloom, you might be thinking, no way, it's just too risky. And I get that, but there is a right way to do this, a safe way. Let's walk through that path to safety. So what does safe actually look like in this world? Well, according to the experts, it's totally possible. But, and this is a big but, it's conditional. Peptides are only considered safe when they're used properly, under medical supervision, and, just as important, when they're sourced the right way, from a prescribing doctor and a legitimate compounding pharmacy. These are special pharmacies that can actually create custom medications for you based on a doctor's exact prescription. So, how do you actually make that happen? It really boils down to a pretty simple 3-step plan. Step 1, you have to work with a doctor, one who actually knows this stuff. Step 2, you get a real prescription. And Step 3, you take that prescription to a licensed compounding pharmacy, and they make it specifically for you. That's it. That's the only way to completely sidestep all the dangers of that online gray market we talked about. All right, so even though things are kind of complicated right now, you have to remember this field is moving fast, really fast. So what's next? What does the future actually hold for peptides and hair care? Despite all these regulatory headaches, the experts are pretty clear on one thing. This is not just some passing fad. Because they're so effective, the research money is going to keep flowing, new and safer peptides are going to be developed,
and you can bet the conversation around them is only going to get louder. Honestly, we're just scratching the surface of what these things can do.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Given how well they've been shown to work, it seems like it's a done deal. Peptides are going to play a huge role in the future of hair care. The real question isn't if, it's how. How are all these forces, regulation, medicine, what you and I want as consumers, how are they all going to come together to shape a future that's not just innovative, but most importantly, safe?